It still quite amazes me that I was head of Boys High for a quarter of a century.
You started at Hamilton Boys High in 1979 and stayed there for the next 46 years. In 99, you became the headmaster, and you were the first woman in New Zealand to be appointed headmaster of a boys' school.
Parents of boys need to understand how much boys need to feel involved in things that are happening, how much they need to feel proud of their contribution to what's happening. I think we underestimate the power of telling somebody that they're needed and that they're important. When boys are at their most unlovable, that's when they need love the most. If people ask me what's the most important quality of a really good leader, I always say vulnerability. And when I had breast cancer in 2006, I was open to being human with the boys. They all knew. I spoke about it at assemblies. And they said it's quite an aggressive cancer. You'll either be dead in 6 months or you'll be cured. I never thought that I was going to die, so I just carried on, really. You know, they say once you've had cancer, you see the lights are brighter. You know, everything's brighter. Everything seems more real and more precious and more meaningful, and that's true.
Over the 25 years, you personally wrote the year 13 leaver testimonials, literally hundreds every year. And in the research for this episode, we found the ones you wrote for us, and I wanted to share back with you a passage you wrote about each of us.
Actually got mine here.
Oh.
Yeah. This week on Between Two Beers, we talked to Susan Hassell. This was a really special one for us. Susan was our former headmaster and my former teacher, and she played a significant role in both of our young lives.
Susan worked at Hamilton Boys High School for 46 years before stepping down last year, and in 1999 became the first female headmaster of a boys' school in New Zealand. Today, Hamilton Boys High is a model for what state education can be, with values-driven, committed leadership, and Susan was the driving force behind the school's remarkable rise.
She was appointed an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2023 for services to education, and has been awarded the Hamilton Kirikiriroa Medal for outstanding contribution to the city.
After leaving Hamilton Boys High in 2025, Susan has stayed involved in education and is now the Chancellor at the University of Waikato.
In this one, we cover Susan's life and career. We talk about how to turn boys into good men, what we're doing wrong, her vision for the school, and how she helped create sporting excellence across every code. There's so much in here. Susan is a very private person, and this was her first long-form podcast. We felt incredibly proud and privileged to be trusted with telling her story. And stick around for the ending, where we read what Susan wrote about us in our Year 13 testimonials over 20 years ago.
This episode of Between Two Beers is brought to you with the help of TAB. Download the TAB app or visit tab.co.nz to get your bet on. R18, bet responsibly.
Sheamus and I are also stoked to now be in partnership and dressed by Barkers. Check out their range at barkersonline.co.nz.
Enjoy.
Susan Hassell, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
We're very excited to have you. This is a really cool episode for us because we are both Hamilton Boys High old boys, and you were our headmaster in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we wanted to start by asking what you remember about us as teenage boys, if anything.
Geez, that's a tough one when you've had over 20,000 boys or something in those years.
Thousands of boys, but I do remember you both because you were wonderful young men, and it's interesting how you remember the ones where you started as head. You remember those ones especially clearly because they were part of my journey to become a headmaster. So you were very special to me. To be fair, I remember Bruce Holloway as much as I remember you because he was a big part of Hamilton Boys High School and a very special man. So you, as his son, stand out as a worthy successor to him, and so your role in sport was really important to the school at the time. We weren't a notably successful at national level school and at sport when I became head, and I think you, Steven, really were a very strong part of contributing to the beginnings of our journey to become better and stronger. And the same with you, Sheamus. I mean, I was only head for a short time when you were there, but I have been very fortunate to keep up with you over the years. You have made your presence known to me on many, many occasions as I've watched you grow into a very special man. And I think that, if I'm honest, I'm very proud of you both, that you have turned into such special people, just as thousands of Hamilton Boys High School students have. So, yeah, I remember you through sport.
That's very
really
kind. I should actually start with an apology on that sporting front because I think I was the worst first 11 football captain of all time. I think that 1999 season when you were first headmaster was possibly the worst in the school's history. So on for my part, I do apologise for getting your sporting record off to such a terrible start.
No, well, it starts at the top, so the headmaster should take all the blame for that one.
Very good.
Yeah.
We recently bumped into another Boys High old boy, James McConey, at the Hellberg Awards and told him you were coming on the show, and his face lit up. And immediately he told us his favourite quote that he said was a Sue Hassell original, which is, "You can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to turn up." And we hope to start there. Can you tell us
wonderful.
About that?
I'm very impressed that James remembers that, to be honest. He was a very special old boy. He and Andrew Lumsden were in my class together, and Andrew's now known as Te Reira, and so I remember them both as giving me the funniest year of my teaching career. I'm impressed that James remembers that you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up, because that is one of my mantras. I've got so many mantras that I'm happy to share with you if you'd like me to, but they're mantras about what matters most in life. And what matters most in life to us as adults when we're dealing with children and when we're dealing with adolescents. And I think that you can pretend to care, you can pretend to be good as a parent or as a teacher or as a person, but showing up is what it's all about. You know, there was a research done in the States many, many years ago now of a group of 1,000 Borstal students, they called it Borstal at that time, and they asked every single one of them, they're all men, what could have happened in your childhood that would have made a difference to how you've turned out as a man. And virtually over 90% of them said to have had somebody who cared or at least pretended to care in my life would have turned my life around early. And my theory is that you have to show up to show that you care. You have to be there for people when they need you. From my perspective as a headmaster, it was going to games, it was going to sports, it was going to the things that the young men in my life loved themselves, so that I could show them that I loved them, so that they would then love the school back and love me back. And that's what it's all about. That's what my whole life journey as a headmaster has been, is showing boys the importance of love. And so you can pretend that you love them, but you really have to prove to young men that you love them. And it's my message to parents, as well as to teachers, as well as to just the general population. Be open, that you care enough to be there, even on a very cold Saturday morning at 8 a.m. in the rain.
There's a few things I want to say in response to that. The first is that in the background of this, like, we have tried to get you on this podcast for so long. And even in the beginning, you were like, oh, no one's going to be interested in what I've got to say. And then you deliver one of the most insightful responses to the first question we've ever had. So, yeah, unreal. Thank you for sharing that.
I still think that.
Our favourite type of guest. And then I want to lead into, and I want to say, I wasn't aware of this when I was at school, so I might mess the pronunciation up, but is Aretē, is it excellence?
Aretē, yeah.
Aretē? Excellence without
Greek
arrogance.
word, yeah. So it's not surprising you don't understand ancient Greek pronunciation.
Oh, no, you did classics, though. You should have got that right. Can you explain to us a little bit more about that concept?
Aretē. Well, Aretē is one of the virtues. So in Greek philosophy, there are all of the virtues, and the most important one is Aretē, and that has been the best you that you can possibly be in all aspects. And in Greek culture, it's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the academic, it's the spiritual, it's all aspects of a man. So Aretē is the key cornerstone word at Hamilton Boys High School. It's a key cornerstone word and what I believe is really important. So that if you're in the first 11 football team, as you were, you need to be the best first 11. If you have the potential to win nationals, then you should. If you're in the 9 gold football team, which is the 10th football team in the third form or year 9 at Hamilton Boys, then you should be the best. You should try to win Division 6, so you have to throw yourself into being the best you can be in all aspects. And the most important aspect, of course, is is your character and you as a man and you as a person. But if you do it in the aspect that you love, then you'll do it in other areas as well. And, they talk about boys needing islands of competence. It's one of my favourite sayings, that you need an island of competence. You have to be good at something as an adolescent boy so that then you can become good at other things. And so Aretē is all about polishing your strength so that it's the best you can be, and then you'll be able to be better than you thought you could be in the other areas. And Aretē is really important. It's a really important part of our lives. I'm not sure that in the 21st century we focus on it enough because we live in a world of we're looking for instant gratification, and Aretē doesn't mean instant gratification. It means working hard and working consistently to become better than you thought you could be.
And that's how you build things, right? I mean, that is 46 years?
Yeah, 46 years. I lived my life at Hamilton Boys.
Yeah,
Yes.
with consistency over time, right? That's exactly
Turning up.
what you're speaking to.
Yeah, being there. It's being there and caring is the key, I think, to being successful. I mean, I started there as a first-year teacher. So there was a young man in my class who was a footballer who'd been over to England on a scholarship to be in part of Manchester United or City, I'm not sure. And he came back and he was older than I was in my Year 12 class. So I started when I was pretty young.
Wow.
And everybody thought I'd start going out with them because I was pretty young at the time. They either thought that or they thought I was married to Mr. Ross because I was Miss Ross at the time. So, But his wife Lynette's managed to make sure that nobody thinks that anymore. She still jokes about it.
Framing is important to us. So I want to paint a really clear picture of who you are and what you've done for the listeners. So you started at Hamilton Boys High in 1979 and stayed there for the next 46 years. In 1999, you became the headmaster, a role which you occupied for 25 years to the day before stepping down last year. And you were the first woman in New Zealand to be appointed headmaster of a boys' school. And in our prep, we've spoken to a few voices that we want to bring in here because we asked them to describe you. And I want to read what David Williams said, who's an ex-head boy who taught at Boys High under you. He said, "When I went to school in the 90s, New Zealand was more equal. Schools were fairly standard. Susan created an empire. People flocked to Boys High because she created excellence. At a system level, you couldn't stop that. There's no law of nature that says Hamilton Boys High in 2026 should occupy the place it does in New Zealand life. It should just be a bog-standard state boys' school, but it's not. It's a model of what state education can be with values-driven, committed leadership. Today, the built environment alone is night and day compared to the other boys' school outside Auckland. People go up there and say, this feels like a private school. She was a public servant who served the public her whole life, probably at significant personal cost. She gave her life to others in a way so few people do." And I'm going to continue and I'll get you to respond afterwards to Alex Bagent, who's your oldest daughter. And she writes, "I think that people would assume it was just a job or a career for her with a lot of downtime, but Mum literally lived and breathed Hamilton Boys. From meeting Dad in the staff room as teacher to becoming headmaster, I honestly can't remember a Saturday at home with Mum growing up. She made sure to watch every first 15 rugby game each season, every rowing regatta, never missed a Māori Cup in 25 years, Pacifica and Kapa haka competitions, every production each year, the list goes on. It was never just sitting in an office and hiring a few teachers per year. She always had to do more. People have joked that she was married to the job, and I agree that Hamilton Boys truly made up the majority of her life. She made it her goal to ensure public school boys were equal, if not achieving better academically with girls in private schools. She was literally a mum to over 2,000 boys a year. On the birth of my first son and her first grandchild, she visited me in Waikato Hospital, and 5 minutes later took the lift to a ward to see a Hamilton Boys High boy she knew staying in hospital. In her personal life, she equally never sits still and is an active relaxer with the highest standards of anyone I've ever met. Now she has retired to a job on the Teachers' Council, Chancellor of the University of Waikato, Waikato Hospice Board of Trustees, and mentoring other school leaders in New Zealand."
That's very special. That brings me to tears.
Yeah, I wanted to, there's a lot to cover there, but are both of those fair and accurate?
I'm very grateful to both of those people for saying such lovely things. And to start with David Williams is a part of why Hamilton Boys is so special. He came back as a teacher and he has made a huge contribution himself. He's just recently left to train teachers in his new role. He's one of the brightest young men I ever taught, and I value his perspective. I did throw myself into Hamilton Boys High School. I do believe that a job is more than a job. You need to love your job. You know, people talk about work-life balance. I I heard somebody say recently that it should be work-life integrity, that you combine the two so that they both become your life and they both become your world, and that you gain joy from your job. And I think if you don't gain joy from your job, and I've said this over many, many years to teachers, if you're not gaining joy from your job, then just bring me your resignation letter, because nobody's benefiting from you being here. And that's a piece of advice every single person in a workplace needs to understand. And because I loved my job so much, it made it easy for me to work hard to make Hamilton Boys High School a special place. And I'm proud of the school that it's become. It's not me, it's the team that I worked with over the years. We had a shared vision, and our vision was to make Hamilton Boys High School the best boys' school in New Zealand. That was our vowed vision. But our vision was to make it the happiest boys' school in the country, to make it the place where young men could grow to be good men, good adults, and where they felt safe and really happy, and that they could leave school. And I think this is really important for parents, to choose a school where their children can leave school feeling proud of the fact that they went to that school. And so all I was trying to do was create a school where every single student who left felt proud that he was part of Hamilton Boys, that he could go down to Otago or Canterbury, and when somebody says, oh, what school did you go to? Because that's the question they asked on those places. He'd say Hamilton Boys, and they say, oh, wow, that's good. So that's the answer that I was trying to carve for the students of the school, because they are special and they do mean a great deal. And Hamilton Boys was teaching a third of all the young men in Hamilton at the time. So we were making a difference to Hamilton. And if we failed, we were failing our city, and we were failing all of those people. So David is a special young man, middle-aged man. I better say that in case he ever listens to this. He's very special. So his words are humbling. And my daughter, she lived through my years at Hamilton Boys. She was born when I was a teacher. I think I was the dean of Year 13 when she was born, and the Year 13 group all got together and bought me this huge pink teddy bear before she was born. I didn't know what I was having, so I said it better be a girl. I was actually really worried that it was going to be a boy, so that the Year 13 class would be really disappointed because they thought I was having a girl. And so, I love those boys. I really, really do love those boys. And her words are true. I did spend my Saturdays, but Sundays were always for my family. Yeah, so it's a family of the school. Mother Teresa says this lovely thing about families, and she said the problem with today's world is that we draw the circle of the family too small. I think we need to realise that our children, my grandchildren, don't just need that nuclear family. We need the village. We need we need to let lots of people in to their world, and schools are a part of the family. And we need to draw that circle around the child of what his family or her family is, wider and bigger. It's not a responsibility, it's a joy. It's a genuine privilege to be part of the lives of other people's children and feel as though you're making a difference and you're part of their family.
Yeah, I'm doing the economy of scale in my mind and thinking about that statement, because I know that statement to be true, that a third of the men in Hamilton have been through the school. And I'm trying to do the math over 46 years about the sheer volume of people that have come through. But I'm interested in how, and this is a very wide question, but how much it changed from 1979 to 2025. Like the change that you saw across the school, not just in your years as a headmaster, but as a first-year teacher to then, must be vast.
Yeah. Well, the school changed hugely. Education changed hugely from when I started teaching. There were 800 boys when I first started, so it was quite a small school. There were only 4 women teachers. 3 of us were called Susan. I've said this before quite often. The headmaster still didn't know my name. Yeah, so he had a 75% chance of getting it right. So he was lovely. He was a lovely man. Mr. Taylor, his name was. Very special man. But the school evolved through the years. I think Hamilton Boys has always drawn good students. It was very traditional education in those days. You sat school certificate, you got UE accredited, you did bursary. It was the same education that I'd been through myself. And it's evolved. And students are better served by education now than they were. The school itself was a typical boys' school in the time. My early years, even though I was short, I would break up fights in the playground at lunchtime, and boys would, from the back who were watching, would shout out, "Give her a chance," it was that kind of a school, give Miss a chance, let her break up the fight. And it's evolved into a school, I think, where you would be shocked if you ever saw a fight at Hamilton Boys High School. It's not the culture of the school, and I think that's something that we have crafted over the years, that the boys themselves wouldn't allow that to happen. If it starts, they stop it. And we rely on the boys in schools now, even more in the 1980s. Schools were driven by, we still had the cane. I was proud of the fact I've never given anybody the cane. But the schools of today, the staff and the principals rely on the boys and the girls. If they won't do what you ask of them, then it won't happen. So I think that you need to work with them, and that's the evolution of a good school, where you're all working together for the sake of the students. And to do that, you need to show that you care, and you need to be there. You need to show up. You need to speak at assemblies about what you believe in. That's really important, that you need to articulate what you believe in at all times. Preach the gospel, if necessary, use words. You need to be the person you tell them is the right sort of person. To do that, to model that, is critical to adolescents, boys and girls.
Is that what makes a good leader, in your opinion? Is that conviction and speaking to your values?
Yeah, it's part of it. It's really part of it. If people ask me what's the most important quality of a really good leader, I always say vulnerability. People say resilience, but, I used to teach a little bit of Latin at Boys High, and vulnerability comes from the word wound. So to be vulnerable means to have a wound. And, the old Leonard Cohen song about the cracks where the light gets in? I think that's really important. It's a beautiful poem written about it that Leonard Cohen plagiarised, but vulnerability is letting the light into the wound. It's showing that you're human. It's being open to being human. And when I had breast cancer in 2006, I was open to being human with the boys. They all knew. I spoke about it at assemblies. Hundreds of boys would come up to me and say, "I hope you're all right, miss. I hope you don't die." They're not very tactful, but they are really caring.
Yeah.
And I think that shows what it's all about, that if I was willing to tell them that I had breast cancer, they knew I was wearing a wig. I never took it off at assembly. I did take it off in the staff room, but they knew it was a wig, and they were happy to say, "I love your wig, miss," and how do you manage to get your eyebrows done properly? So, it was an openness. So I think that's really important to be a good leader, is to showing that you're human and to showing that you're just the same as they are, because a great leader is somebody who knows and understands what those who follow need. And what boys in a boys' school need is a great leader who can speak about what they should be believing in, because somebody has to do it. And sometimes parents aren't able to do it anymore. We no longer have that crutch of the church who are telling people what good is and what evil is, because people aren't part of churches. So somebody has to talk about good and evil. Somebody has to talk about what makes a good man. Somebody has to model what love is. And teachers need to teach the boy before they teach the subject. All of those things are critically important in the 2020s, I think. We need to be there as part of the family, crafting these good boys. I've got off track slightly here, but I think that being a leader is about many things, but that's the most important thing. I think there has to be an authenticity about it as well. You can't pretend to care. You have to show up.
What makes a good man? I want to build into that because I want to talk a lot about what's important for boys and how to develop them into good men. But I want to actually sort of shape the story of you, because interesting origin story. Before your connection with Hamilton Boys, your family came over from Scotland. And
yes.
How old were you? And can you tell us about the beginnings of what your family was like in those days and arrival in New Zealand?
My mother's a New Zealander. My father's Scottish. So we went to Scotland. We were in Scotland for part of my childhood. We came back, and I started high school at Manurewa High School. It's an unusual school at the time. I'm sure it's wonderful now. But it was going through some growing pains at the time when I started there. My father came from a poor background. We came from Greenock, which is a town just down the Clyde from Glasgow. So he grew up with 5 siblings in tenement buildings and in quite a difficult home. So he managed to escape to New Zealand, made a life for us as his children. Very special man. Left school when he was 12, went to work on the dockyards, pushed himself into, having a bit of a career, and very, very loving man. Didn't show it, didn't ever say it very often. My most memorable moment with my father was when he was dying, and he, as he said his last breath, and it moves me to tears now, he said, "I love you, Susan." And it was one of the only times he'd ever said it. And my siblings are very jealous. But they say it was because I was sitting right next to him and I was the only one he could see. But it meant so much to me. So my background is humble on my father's side.
And your mother?
And my mother, she was a third-generation New Zealander. Her grandfather was the Auckland City engineer for a while, so she came from Auckland. The family law is that he designed and built Grafton Bridge, so it's got his name on the plaque. So she came from a bit of a different background, but they met and fell in love, and that was history. Yeah, so they had a really happy life. They were really wonderful role models as good parents, very strong parents. I had a sister who was born in New Zealand. She's 12 years younger than me, so we had a very happy childhood in Manurewa. Yeah, growing up, it was a good time, simple time. I think that's what we need to recreate for our young people today. We need to create that simplicity of family where, where the family matters, where you're loyal to your family, where you stick up for your family, where you openly love them, you do things with them. All those things are really important. You eat together, very special time. So my childhood was, my adolescence was Manurewa.
So where does the softness and the empathy and because your dad had that, but he couldn't sort of articulate it.
Yeah, he was a traditional Scottish man. And when I left school, he was a believer that you either got married or had a career. You didn't ever have both. So when I went teaching, he thought that he'd never get any grandchildren out of me. Yeah, and that was just his very traditional way. Yeah. So I managed to teach for several years before I got married and had children. So he was reassured for a while that he was right. He was a good role model in that sense. But you got what you expected from him. He found it really hard to be physically loving or open. My mother was the opposite. She's a hugger. Yeah,
many men of that era.
It's a generational thing.
Right? Yeah, it was a generational thing, and a Scottish thing. It's very Scottish. You don't show love.
I've heard you reference a Mr. Brown from Manurewa High School as quite a formative person in your early years.
He was. I think he must have been the deputy head, and he was my English teacher in year 12 in the sixth form, and I'll always remember him because it was him that gave me my love for English and I'd done Latin and French and other things through the school, and I'd never really loved English, but I'm not sure whether he's still alive, but if he is, and by any remote chance he hears this, I'd like to thank him because he was inspirational in my understanding. We did Lord of the Flies, I remember, as the book. So the fact that I remember that is probably quite special, that he taught it in a way that was very meaningful for me. It resonated with me, and I decided I want to be an English teacher because of him.
And was it an easy path to back then?
Back then it was easy. Yeah.
It was, okay.
You're very blessed in those days. You got a full studentship to go to university, so you virtually had a living wage because you're contracted to be a teacher when you finished.
But you also did a master's?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Straight away?
Yeah, I did my master's, yeah. So I'd come from Scotland, so I was quite young in my year group, so I did my last master's paper on my 21st birthday. Yeah.
And then
I went to Teachers College for a year.
Right.
And then came out to Hamilton Boys High School.
You bounced out to Hamilton Boys in 1979, arrived as Miss Ross.
Miss Ross.
What do you remember? Do you remember your first day in the classroom?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. There was a boy in my very first class. His name was Arden Fatu. And Arden Fatu was a boxer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But I didn't know how to open the windows. I was an A block, for those of you who remember A block. I didn't know how to open the windows. And he said, "Oh, for goodness sake." And he got up, and he was about 6'6" at the time, and opened the windows for me. That's my memory of my very first day. Yeah. But the boys were good. They were really good to me. Yeah, they were. They gave me a chance.
There's a bit of law. You spoke about law before, but that you might have got sent home in your early years because of a your own uniform situation.
Inappropriate uniform.
I got sent home because I wore jeans. Should I say this? I'm not sure.
Say it.
The headmaster at the time, I was a young teacher, and he said I looked as I poured myself into my jeans. I was 10 kilos lighter than I am now, so I didn't really pour myself into them, but I did go home and change into a skirt. And I've remembered that story because it meant a lot to me at the time. I was hurt by it, but it did make me recognise the fact that what you wear is really important. And so Hamilton Boys High School's got one of the most traditional dress codes for staff of any school in the country because, as he said, you have to look like a teacher to be respected as a teacher. He was quite right. Yeah, and I never wore tight jeans again. And when I became headmaster, it was no denim. So, yeah, I was even more tough than he was. And I've had to tell women staff off in my time as head too, so I always remember him telling me off. So I try to do it in a little bit more of a gentle way, but they still have to go home and get changed.
Just while we're on fashion, we've recently signed up a partnership with Barkers who dress Steven and I, and they love to get fashionable grooming tips from the guests that we have on. So do you take that no denim into your personal life as well? Has that bled through?
I do now. I'm over 70. I just don't think old. No, I didn't. I still wore denim.
Have you got any other fashionable grooming tips picked up over the years at Boys High?
Oh, that would be a hard one to answer. No, not really. I love Barker's clothes. My sons wear Barker's clothes, so I would advocate people to go to Barker's. I love button-down shirts. Yeah, I really like traditional shirts. I think if you want to be successful in your career, you should always dress for the position that you're aspiring to be you're aspiring to be next. Lots of people will say that, but it's so true. So when I was an assistant principal for 18 months, I tried to dress as I was the head because I was looking for other schools. I didn't think I'd be the head of Boys High, but I was looking to move on to a principal's role. So I dressed in suits, and I think that's really important.
That is a great tip.
We don't dress well enough today.
I wanted to ask about that. So you get to Boys High, and then it's 19 years later you become headmaster, and there's 18 months as assistant principal. Was that always was it quite early you had that goal? Did you want to become the headmaster early in your teaching career?
Oh, I was very naive and thought that I'd like to get a management leadership role quite early. I was made a dean in my very early years, so I became the 7th form dean when I think I was a third year teacher. So I relish those kinds of opportunities to be the boss. Lots of people will tell you that I like being the boss. But I would like to say that I like being the boss because that's the way you can make a difference. But people would probably argue with that and say she just likes being the boss. In fact, I remember, I've got a story about a boy who was sitting upstairs at C Block, which is upstairs, and I used to do a tour of the school virtually every day with Graeme or with Nigel or somebody. And the boy said to the teacher, "Why does Mrs. Hassell always think she's the queen? She just walks around the school as though she's the queen." And the teacher came and told me this at morning tea, and I said, "Well, what's your point?"
Yeah, I was going to say, you are.
I am the queen, because that's what the boys need me to be. They need me to be the one who's in charge, but you do it with humility. To be honest, I'm not really like that. I'm more of a humble person than that. I think I've suffered from imposter syndrome all of my life, really. And I think that many women do, and I think many men do as well, really, that we aren't quite sure that we're up to it, and we hide it with bravado, and we hide it in many different ways. But the imposter syndrome is good for you, I think. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you on your toes. It makes you think, no, I've got to prove to myself. It's Aretē, really. It's being the best you can be by going further than you think you can, by being brave enough, by having that courage. Courage is a really important virtue to have, and if you feel that insecurity, then you're going to be better. Like, I feel that insecurity about being here today. I feel really insecure about being here today. But then I thought, well, I'll just say what I think, so you can edit that bit out. But
not at all.
I think that sometimes you just say it how it is for me, and at the end of my long life, these are the messages I think are really important to hand back to people. You know, it's all about being the leader that other people need you to be, and knowing that and intentionally working out what it is they need. And boys need a leader, irrespective of gender. It doesn't matter what gender the leader is in a boys' school. They need a leader who loves them and who loves them enough to be strong and determined to make the place that they share the best place it can be.
So I'm interested to explore that a little bit more, because it opens up that James Bennett is leaving as headmaster. Are you straight away thinking this is an opportunity for me, or are you feeling maybe a little bit of that imposter syndrome and thinking maybe I shouldn't apply for it even though I want to?
I applied for it at the very last minute, so it closed on a Monday, and on Friday night I applied for it. Yes,
wow.
And somebody on the board rang me and said, well, why don't you apply for the job, Susan, and then you can be the benchmark. I'd only been the assistant principal for 18 months, so I said, oh, okay, it'll be a good experience for me. I didn't genuinely think I'd get it, because boys' schools are run by men, and that's how it was at the time, and I had no concerns about that. But Jim Bennett was a really wonderful mentor for me, and I rang him and said, what do you think? He said, have a go. You know, it can't do any harm. So I did, threw my application together. A wonderful teacher called Marilyn Macy typed it all up for me, because I wasn't much of a typist, and she was the typing teacher. And so I just put it in, and then they shortlisted to 7. And
that's a pretty long shortlist, by the way.
It was very thorough, did all the psychometric testing, and then they shortlisted down to 3. So I was very blessed.
So I spoke to Stu Hackney about a lot of things, but he said that you blew them away in the interview process.
Well, how would he know that?
Well, he's got his sources. He said absolutely blew them away, and as a result, you became the first woman leading a boys' state school in New Zealand. Did the historic significance of that weigh on you, and did you still have imposter syndrome when you got named in that role?
I was nervous. Yeah, I was understandably nervous, or very nervous. I'd been the 7th form dean, and I'd been assistant principal for 18 months, but I didn't have a lot of experience in running a school. But no, I felt ready. I felt ready for it. I had a vision. I had a very strong vision for what I wanted the school to become. And so right from the start, when you're vision driven, when you know what your vision is and you can articulate it, I think it makes it so much easier, because you know that you're doing everything for that North Star. So if you've got this North Star of what you want your vision to be, then everything centres on that North Pole Star. You know, it's like a compass point that every decision, but you base every decision on that.
Do you remember what you said your vision was?
Oh, my vision was that every boy at the school would feel loved and would feel happy and feel successful. You know, it's all about the metaphor of the waterfall, that the water has to touch the rock at the bottom. So every decision you make, you have to make that decision for the weakest boy in the school. How's it going to impact on the weakest boy? And also, how's it going to impact on the best, strongest, most successful boy? You know, it's a every boy thing. So one of the first things I did was change the uniform. So we had, I don't know if you remember the blazer. It was this kind of maroon pink colour blazer, and it was made out of this wool. So we changed to a black blazer. That was the first thing I think we did, and it transformed the look of the school.
You got rid of the blue polo shirts that we used to wear in year 13 as well.
Blue polo shirts, we changed them to black, so they became the men in black, the year 13s. So
I would have much preferred that. Although it did look good in baby blue.
And it was all about being vision driven, and getting a really wonderful team around you made a huge difference for me. I was absolutely blessed, could never have done it by myself. And that made the imposter syndrome much easier to deal with, because I had people I could say, "Are you sure this is the right thing?" And they'd say, "Yeah, just go for it." And so it was a bit of a fool's rush in thing, but I don't think, looking back, there's anything wrong with fool's rushing in where the angels are fearing to tread, because if you don't do it, who will? And so it's an if not you, then who thing. That's a Chris Kugelheim saying, you know. It's a cricket thing. It's a thing that they say, and I don't know, Chris says it. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? And that's really important.
We're going to get to Cougs soon. At this point, we'd like to introduce a character that was central to the three of us, the late Graeme Robinson, who also applied for the headmaster position but lost out to you. But instead of any ill feeling, he became your biggest ally, which tells us a lot about him, but also tells us about you. And I spoke to Stu Hackney, who taught alongside you at Boys High for decades, and he said this about you and Graeme's relationship. He said, "The minute Graeme heard Susan got it, he was the first one to stand up and give a standing ovation. Sometimes partnerships come together and it's the right timing and the right people and they're on the same page. Those two together had a vision right from day one. She needed an ally. You need someone on your team who genuinely shares your vision. But she needed someone prepared to roll their sleeves up and have some battles on her behalf as well. That was critical. And she knew how to build teams and was very, very good at doing it. She was great at identifying potential leaders, and there were people who stayed on the team all the way through, and people got opportunities to go and lead elsewhere, and that's part of her success as well." But I was hoping we could talk about Graeme first and how important his support was.
Well, Graeme was critical. He was critically important. He was noble in defeat, and that's what you have to learn, and that's what he was an example that you show young men, that you have to be as noble in defeat as you have to be noble in victory. It's a real message, and humble in victory. So right from the very first day, he was a huge ally. He was my closest friend at the school, really. He and James, my husband, and he was our best friend, really, his close friend. Graeme just was the yin to my yang. That's what people say, the yin-yang thing. And he was the disciplinarian side of it. So it's an image that I often use, that yin-yang thing with the dot. The black's got a dot of white in it. Well, Graeme was the black. He was the discipline, but he had that love in the centre, and I was the love side of the white, but I had that black discipline dot in the centre. So we were a fantastic team. We worked really well together. I think in life you need somebody like that working beside you to make your working life a joy. You have to love who you work with, and I love the leadership teams that I work with, Stuart included. But Graeme made the school. They called him RoboCop because
we all did. Yeah.
He was so strong. He stood up for his principles and his expectations of the school, and together it just changed really very quickly. We were very fortunate. The boys loved him. Yeah. I think the boys loved him in spite of the fact that he was stern and he ran every Saturday detention. Over years and years, we made the boys do star jumps and really.
Did you ever get Saturday?
Yeah, I got a Saturday.
I got a Saturday as well. I actually think Robo got me out of the Saturday because he became head of football for a while. But I'm glad you painted that picture, because not everybody listening will know Graeme Robinson, but he was known around school as RoboCop, and you bring his name up with other old boys, and some kind of recoil back and think, oh, that guy was just way too hard. But he did. Your description is so accurate. Yeah. He had that little warmth to him that when you got to know him, he was so empathetic and he had so much love in his heart. Very
loving. He loved the boys who weren't so successful, and he mentored them. He crafted them. He wasn't totally understood by the boys. I mean, I don't know whether either of you went to his funeral, but at his funeral they had a photo of him that came up on the slideshow of him as a surfer.
Yeah.
With really long hair and looking like a surfy dude. And the boys in this, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry because there was this big intake of breath that he was a human being.
Did you ever see him at swimming sports? Yeah. At swimming sports, he was like a torpedo going through the pool. And I used to remember that when we'd see boys go,
he was a good swimmer.
Was RoboCop can swim?
His secret was he didn't breathe until about 10 metres before the end, and he only did it once a year.
Always with the vest too, under the white shirt. Always. But
he was a very special man. We have to cherish those people that you work with,
and
allow them to be who they are, because he grew. I think he grew in the time we spent together to be the school. To be the school. It's a plaque on the inside of the front door, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13, and I think that's what Graeme exemplified. It's, there are three things: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And that's what Graeme was all about. He had faith in the boys. He had real hope that things would be perfect, and he loved the school. He absolutely loved the school. His mother and his sister put that on and his daughter put that in his death notice. He loved the school. He died where he loved.
Yeah, on school grounds, wasn't it?
He died in my office with me.
Yeah. How big a loss was that for you, professionally and personally?
Both. It was huge. Yeah, he had a massive heart attack in my office on a Saturday morning after Saturday detentions, and we'd been out watching the sport. And we came back in, and he just said, "I don't feel very well," and he just died. It was huge. And Chris Kugeline came running in because it was cricket at the time. Yeah, there was nothing we could do. It was people say it's the way he would have wanted to go. I'm not sure. It was 3 months before his 65th birthday, and he'd been hanging out for the pension, so he missed out. But no, he was a huge loss to the school.
You carry a lot of trauma from walking into that, but also the kids, everyone is involved in this loss. How did you start thinking about shaping the messaging, and how did you navigate those next few weeks?
It was tough. It was, the seniors had gone. It was November, so it was just the year 9s and 10s. We had a full assembly. The boys cried, even the year 9s and 10s, because it's inconceivable when you have a loss like that in a school. The funeral was huge. It was at the school. His mother came up to the funeral. She was 102 at the time, so she spoke at the funeral. Amazing family, amazing woman. You just carry on. You have to carry on. And we spoke about him. They still speak about him. He always wore white shirts. He never wore coloured shirts. So the staff still have a white shirt day once a year on the day that he died. Oh, yeah, wow. All the staff wear white shirts to school with a vest underneath, because that's what he did. Yeah, so he's still remembered. His legacy lives on.
And those are the unseen roles of a headmaster, right? The unforeseen things that go beyond, as your daughter said, hiring teachers or running school. There's things that happen along the way that you probably never predicted would happen.
Yes, we don't expect them. Funerals of boys, they're the boys dying, tragedies in boys' families. There are so many things about being a principal. It's just like being a mum in many, many ways. Running a school is like being a parent. Yeah, and you feel the same grief and you feel the same joy.
So you've got this incredible ally in Robo. And then in those early years, because you are the first female to be running a boys' school, was there any resistance, or was there any difficulty in that? Or was that even is there anything to talk about in that space?
A lot less than you think, probably. The old boys were concerned that sport would die in the school, because I'd never been interested in sport particularly. I was master in charge of rugby league one year and master in charge of equestrian, so I did a few little bits and pieces. I looked after basketball, but I wasn't a sporting personnel. I wasn't one of the elite sports coaches or anything. So I remember hearing the old boys were concerned about the fact that sport was going to die. So I had to make some quite intentional decisions and recognise how important sport was to boys, and so I started watching sport. Just threw myself into sport. I was accepted very, very well by the other boys' schools heads. They were gracious. I mean, to them it was just who I was. I was just the new head at Hamilton Boys. There were more women were appointed over the years. There were 3 of us for a while there. It's gone back to 2, I think. No, I'm not sure. 1 or 2. But it's never become 50-50 split for boys' schools. Boys' schools are still primarily run by men. But it made the front page of the Herald, so it was ridiculously significant to some people. It wasn't to me. I mean, gender's never been important to me. I'm not proud of the fact I was the first woman. I'm proud of the fact that I was offered the chance to be the head at Hamilton Boys. And I'm proud of the boys for turning the school around and turning it into the school it is today, really. And I think being a woman in some cases made it easier, because boys are more open. Boys are very open to women. I've had, I'd get, for example, a boy would come into a rugby boy would come into my office and tell me he had an STD, and I don't know that he would have told a male headmaster that in the same way. So they treat you like their mum, not the authority figure of the male dad. So that made it easier, I think. It made it easier for them to love me openly, give me a hug. Yeah. But in some ways, it's irrelevant. It's who you are, I think, makes all the difference. There are some women who wouldn't be able to run a boys' school. I think, and there are some men who wouldn't.
I want to dig into a little bit of the detail of how you did it. And I'm bringing David Williams' voice again. And he says, anyone can have a vision, but what's the mechanism? The mechanism in her case is fascinating. Insist on good uniform, short hair, no litter. It's all painfully true. Then what? It was the way she spoke to boys and staff, constant messaging about love and excellence. Those were like North Stars, love and excellence intertwined. How do you shape a community where love for the school becomes the guiding principle? It's abstract. So how did you create love for the school?
He's right, you talk about it. You know, you tell them that you love them. I mean, how do you capture a boy? You know, if you think about a fishing analogy, you can't preach at a boy because it's like fishing without a bait on the hook. So you have to tell a boy, an adolescent boy, that you need him to be there for you, that you need him to work with you to make the school better, because that's the bait, that's the hook that boys will grasp onto. They need to be needed. Parents of boys need to understand how much boys need to feel involved in things that are happening, how much they need to feel proud of their contribution to what's happening. I think we underestimate the power of telling somebody that they're needed and that they're important and that they can make a difference. And that's what I would talk about at assemblies, that, you know, you might be in 10 blue, under 15D rugby team, but you're making a difference because you're going out there and you're playing for the school in the strip. The way you wear the strip is just as important as the way the first 15 wears the strip. And that's just the same as being a parent. You know, if with your son or daughter is in the highest netball team or in the lowest netball team, you still make them feel proud of the fact that they're contributing and that they're making a difference to the school by being there, and that all the boys together show that we have something like 37 football teams, which is what we had at our height, you know, and no other school in New Zealand has 37 football teams. And if you, and the boy I'm speaking to, if you weren't playing, we wouldn't have that many teams. Yeah, so everybody has to feel important. They have to feel needed. So that's the message, that's the mantra that you have to spend time and energy getting across to the boys, that every single one of them is as important as the first 15 captain and as important as the head boy.
But what's curious is that love for the school for a lot of boys continues long after they leave. So you are in this institution, you know, from year 9 to year 13, maybe, not everybody.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years.
But then you come out of it again and there are still people that connect back in and that contribute and still feel that love 26 years after they've left the school, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, well, that's you yourself, Sheamus. You're a great example of somebody who's given back because you've felt needed and you are needed. You know, and that's the message that makes people care about a place, I think. You love a place where you feel as though you're contributing to it. You don't love a place where you just go. I think that's a message that schools often miss, that it needs to be a partnership with the students. It needs to be them making some of the decisions. And it's not about having student councils, because Hamilton Boys has always been a pretty traditional school. We don't let students make decisions, but we let them feel as though they are important. And they are important. And we recognise how important they are to us. And you hope that people will still feel that love and pride through their lives. You know, I don't feel that love and pride for my secondary school, but I still understand how important it is. And I'm still happy when Manurewa High School does well, but I don't think I made a difference to it while I was there. It was the leadership at the time didn't really recognise the need to be like that. It was a 1970s school, so 1960s, 70s school. So I think that we achieved what we achieved through working with the boys, through recognising how special they are, and by everybody understanding that, really. You need a team who all gets it. And that's another thing I often say, that if you can't articulate the vision, then that's quite bad. But if the staff you work with, if the people you work with can't articulate the vision, that's even worse. So can a first-year teacher at a school articulate what we're trying to achieve? If the answer's no, then you're not winning. Everybody has to be behind you.
Which is really interesting because David has picked out words that you've used there, North Star.
Yes, he's using my words.
Yeah, love and excellence. Yes. It's clearly
everybody knows, and people get sick of it. I've got lots of little mantras, you know, and if not you, then who's one of them? Because that's true of the staff as well, you know, and their responsibility to the boys, because it's the same teacher ratio to boys at a school of 2,500 than it is a school of 500. it's the same formula. So every teacher at Hamilton Boys has got 26 boys that they have to particularly love. If you look at it that way, doesn't matter how big the school is, still should be able to understand that vision for what's necessary. And you still have to understand that vision that love has to have some discipline in it, and discipline has to have some love in it, because that's what boys need.
Yeah. I've got a big section here with teen boys chat. I feel like you are uniquely placed.
You're staring down the barrel of it as well.
Yeah, but like you're such the authority on what works and what doesn't. My first question was, what do people get wrong about teenage boys? Like what? Yeah, do you have an answer for that?
What people get wrong about teenage boys, they underestimate how much they're thinking. I think boys do think, they don't articulate it in the same way, but I think that they do think. People don't understand that boys do act out. Adolescents act out. They do stupid things, and it's our job as the adult to forgive them and to recognise that when boys are at their most unlovable, that's when they need love the most. And it's a really hard lesson to learn. And I've been a parent. I know how hard it is to learn that lesson with teenagers.
That's when boys are at their most lovable.
When they're at their most unlovable, is when they need love the most. Yeah, it's when they're at their absolute worst. Sometimes you have to expel a boy from a school, but that's only after you've tried every single thing you can. Like we would only expel a boy every 2 or 3 years, so very low suspension rate, but quite a high stand-down rate. The difference is that a stand-down's for a short time and suspension's forever. So Hamilton Boys, in my philosophy, you stand down a lot of boys for a reasonable low level of offending. They come back and they're fine because they've been told what's what, but you don't have to expel them. Boys, we underestimate the love boys need. We underestimate the love boys need us to show. And we underestimate how much they like to be hugged and how much they like to be cared for, and how open we need to be with them even if they shove us off, which they do. You need to treat every boy as though he's 2, because when they're 2, they love you and they love being hugged and they love hugging back. So don't let them change. Hug them when they go for their first day at high school, and hug them when they come off the stage at the Year 13 graduation. I think physical touch is really important to show boys, because you're showing them that you care. Do
you see that change around sort of 15 or 16 when they perhaps don't publicly want to be hugged?
It does change, but it's too bad, in my opinion. You just do it.
Yeah.
They go through that grunting stage in Year 10 or Year 9. You just work through it. You just ignore it. You just keep treating them as though they're the same, and you keep treating them as though they're the best. And you treat the rest like the best. It's another one of my mantras. You always treat the rest like the best. Like you always treat everybody with the same respect and love. No matter how unlovable they might be and no matter how annoying they might be. And the best teachers are teachers who understand that. So patience is important with boys in a different way than it's important with girls, I think.
Yeah.
But I've never taught girls, so I don't know. But the given wisdom is that girls will hold a grudge longer than a boy, and that girls will want to talk about things more than a boy. And boys don't articulate their feelings very well. And so you have to understand that. It's a lovely story. You might edit this out. But there's a lovely story by Celia Lashley where she talks about a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they both write a diary. Have you heard this story?
No.
They have a day together, and the girl writes in her diary that we went out, we did this, we came home, and we had dinner together, and we watched the rugby together, and I thought he was a bit distracted and unhappy, and I'm really worried about it. So we went to bed and we made love, and I could tell when we made love that he was really unhappy and that he was distant, and and wasn't as feeling as before. And I think he's going to break up with me, and I'm really worried about what I should do. And so I'm going to talk to my friends tomorrow about it and see what they think. That's the girls' diary. And the boys' diary is All Blacks lost, had sex.
So good.
And I think it's a good story, you know. So, and it tells you what teenage boys can be like, really. But he was, you know, he was him and she was her. But I think it's a good story for girls, really. They should recognise that, you know, they shouldn't overthink things with boys. And it's good, after all my years of working with boys, I don't overthink things anymore. But I still expect them to open up to me. And you have to keep pushing. You know, there's all the old stories that you always talk to a boy when you're sitting in a car with him beside you, because then he doesn't have to look at you. You know, all those given truths, they're absolutely true, you know. And you can sit and talk with boys when they're most relaxed, and they'll open up. And you give them time. Give them time to open up, because then you'll get a gem suddenly in the middle of it.
Before you became headmaster, how did you learn all of the skills and the wisdom that you have? You've got all these mantras and you've got like such great wisdom to share. But like, did you go on courses? Did you learn from others? Like, how did you actually acquire all of your knowledge base?
I think you learn sayings and mantras like a jackdaw. You go to lots of different speeches and you listen to lots of very wise people and you pick them up and you think, yeah, I believe that, I'll use that. But in terms of learning to be a leader, it's something you can only do once you are a leader. And people go to leadership training courses and all sorts of things. And I'm not sure that you can ever learn to lead until you lead. You know, it's one of those things. It's like you can't learn to play football until you play football. So leadership's pretty similar to that. And it's the same as being captain of a team. You know, you can't practice being captain of a team till you're captain. Yeah, and then you learn from your mistakes. And so I learned through my journey. I was the assistant principal in charge of curriculum for a little while. Before that, I was a dean. So I learned a huge amount from being a dean. So a dean in a school is the person who looks after the year level group, and it supports them, and it also is the disciplinarian for that group. And so I learned from my mistakes in that area. I had some terrible failures. I had boys shouting at me across the room once about how I just didn't understand. And I just said to them, yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't understand. I was wrong. And that was probably a turning point for me, just recognising the difference it made to that boy when I apologised and said I was wrong. Was we had a fantastic relationship after that. So you learn to be a leader in the sense of making those sorts of simple mistakes, and we all make them. We don't learn from each other's mistakes. That's something you realise as a leader. You can preach the gospel to all the other people I mentor, but they'll still make their own mistakes. So, and that's fair enough. So you learn on the job, and then you need people around you to forgive you and to trust you and to be willing to walk the journey with you, even though you're pretty hopeless at times at the beginning.
What is I probably should have done this in the research, but what is the data on like same-sex schools versus mixed schools and boys versus girls? Like, are there differences in success?
Academically, boys do better in single-sex schools, irrespective of what they used to call deciles. So they've done a lot of research on it. The Boys' School Association has done a lot of research on it when I was part of the association, that boys do significantly better at every decile level in single-gender schools. There are probably loads of reasons for that, but I think it's because they're focused. The focus is there. The academic focus is there. They feel settled there. So right through all of the year levels, all of the NCA levels, it's true. And it's particularly true for Māori and Pasifika boys. They do much better in boys-only schools. I think it's because they're connected by their sport. Yep. And this connection with sport, you talk about those islands of competence again. If you connect a boy to his school through his sport, then he's connected to the school as a whole. You know, and I often used to say it at information evenings for Year 8 parents, your son can come to Boys High for soccer, but we're going to give him a great education on the way and he won't even notice. So that's what it really is all about. The boys might choose the school because it's a great rugby school or a great football school or a great chess school, which Hamilton Boys is, but you capture them and you capture them because they are part of something at the school, and then they learn, and they settle, and they're settled. It makes a big difference.
Sport is an incredibly important part of your success in the Boys High story, because after you were appointed, you made 3 defining appointments and super coaches, right? Chris Kugelheim in cricket, Glenn Ross and Nigel Hotham. And what I'm interested in the thinking there, because you said the old boys were worried about sport. It turned out to be your biggest strength because you come from an academic background. Was the thinking that I'm going to get experts in these fields to help build out these individual areas?
Yeah, it was absolutely intentional. But also they were my friend. Chris and Glenn were my friends. Yeah, so Glenn came back to New Zealand from coaching in England, and he was looking for a job, and I said, well, we need somebody to run rowing. So he came to Boys High because he was my friend, and because he was being good to me, and he stayed right through my journey. Chris came back when he was looking for a job, and we thought, yep, we need Chris, and so we got him involved as well. And then Nigel just applied for a DP's job, and he won it on his merits. So I was very, very fortunate to get Nigel. It wasn't because he was a first 15 coach and the best first 15 coach that Kelson had ever known, that he got the job. He got the job because he was the best pick for the DP's role. So that was a very serendipitous double whammy that we got him for coaching as well. So that team, they are the most successful team of 3 coaches that sustained that success. I think it wasn't just one-off. It wasn't just a super team that they got 1 year or 2. They sustained their national level of success for years. And not just because they drew good boys to the school, but because of their strength as coaches and their strength as men, because they were able to craft the top 6 inches. They didn't just craft the male, the athlete. They crafted the mind of the boy. All 3 of them are astoundingly good at crafting the understanding and the sense of who they were as young men, and the love. They all use love as the way in which they captured their athletes.
Just as a side quest, how much would it have meant to get a basketball title for the school? It was the one sport that eluded you, right?
I said I wasn't leaving till we got a basketball title, and everybody said, well, you'll be 90. But it meant a lot because I was the master in charge of basketball way back when. I even did my coaching certificate at Church College at the time. We were never the dominating basketball school in the Waikato, so we weren't ever going to win basketball. And the Waikato doesn't breed very, very tall people. And there are some real magnet schools out there. So, but we did our best, and we did really well, and came in the top 8 at nationals. And I was there when we did that year. So, Aretē was alive and well in basketball, put it that way.
But it speaks to the school's success that was one of the major sporting titles that the school didn't achieve during your time,
yes,
but also chess, Kapa, haka. And I do have to tip my cap because when I left school in 99, there wasn't really a strong Māori Pacifica feel to the school. When I look at what the school is now and the steps that were taken, phenomenal to see the growth in that area. But I guess that reflects the changing demographic of a school body as well, that people start to see themselves in the school population.
It's partly the changing demographics in Hamilton. It's partly intentional because every student who starts at a school should be able to see themselves in the mirror of the school, and that's one of my sayings, that if you can't see yourself in the mirror of the school, then that means it's not a fit for you. But the state schools should be able to fit everybody. They should be able to fit whatever ethnicity wants to come in, whatever gender wants to come in. We've had transgender students at Hamilton Boys now, and we have unisex toilets across the school now. So, single cell toilets rather than the old urinals of the old days. So all of those things you can change to be inclusive. And then you craft a sense that you can come here and be the best Kapa haka student. So you have to provide that. And we have been blessed by our staff for that too. I mean, Toti West, who was an old boy, he was a head boy, and he came back and he's crafted our kapa haka to lead them through to national titles. So I have to say I'm blessed. I was absolutely blessed by the staff that I had there.
But despite the changing face and the changing demographic of the school, there are some traditions that are foundation parts of the school as well. School assemblies, honours caps, these sorts of things were, again, deliberately
absolutely.
Put in to instill that pride.
It's all about rites of passage, and everybody who writes about the needs of boys talks about the needs for rites of passage. So you need those rites of passage. You need those formal assemblies where people will stand up and be awarded something that's special to them. So that you need when the boys come in. When the boys come in at Hamilton Boys the first day, and it's the same in lots of schools, the Year 13s are there to welcome them with a haka. And then they walk through the Year 13s, through the Graeme Robinson doors, into the hall for the first time, and then they become a Boys High student. And when they leave, they graduate and they become a man. That's the rite of passages that they go through. And in between, there's all the other ones that are really, really important, like getting your honours badge, like getting your honours blazer and your honours tie. Those things are things young men aspire to. If you get level 3 with excellence, you get a blazer, a black blazer. And it's interestingly significant how much those sorts of things matter. They really do matter to young people because it's a sign, it's an outward signal that they're doing well and that their efforts are being rewarded.
One of the rituals that we were laughing about this week in preparation for this was singing. Singing? Because you get, our experience of high school was you sung. Like, you sung all the time. And we sung O Flower of Scotland and all these songs.
We sung Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On because it was a Titanic theme for the ball that year.
But, I remember that.
But then thinking that's not normal. Like, other schools don't do all that.
Apparently they don't.
And you just think
don't.
You do. But
Boys High does.
Yeah.
Yes. We always do. They sang Flower of Scotland for me.
Yeah. Well, we only realised that this time around,
And Danny Boy.
I always thought it was Harry Sydney that we sung it for. But
it was for a while, but then it became me. Yeah. But Danny Boy, they learned for me.
Yeah.
So what about singing specifically?
Singing is really important, I think. Not enough boys' schools do singing, and I don't know that co-ed schools do. The choirs get up and sing. But singing as a group, there's so much research about it. It's a powerful bonding mechanism. And when they sing with will, and even with enthusiasm, then it's very moving. It is very moving to watch, and you can try them with anything. We learned "You'll Never Stand Alone" for Paul Nixon. So because it was is that his football team's song? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Never Walk Alone.
Yeah, You Never Walk Alone. That's the one. I think
Nongumasu, the Fijian hymn has come into the school as well.
Yes, it is. Yes, that came through the first 15.
Yeah.
But that's really beautiful. It's just very special to stand at assemblies and to know that we're all singing together. And the staff sings, everybody sings and enjoys it. And so the Year 9s come in for the very first day and they start learning to sing. And it's just something that's a very special part of a strong school.
Does the school still do one more step along the world I go? Is that still okay? Maybe I mentioned that because I threw that past Stephen as well, and he's like,
and we didn't keep that Titanic song for very long either. As soon as you left, we got rid of it.
I've got a few questions about sort of well-being and when boys are struggling. And is there a way that you can see, can you spot a boy who looks fine but isn't? Are there things that you're looking for?
Yes, I think it's something you need to have that sort of understanding of what that looks like in a school, any school. You need to have it as a parent. You need to see the changes. So it's all about changes. Really, an outgoing boy will become quite introverted. An introverted boy will act out. So they shift their normal patterns of behaviour. But it's also all about talking to boys all of the time so that they're used to having to share things like with their tutor teachers. So a tutor teacher will have a boy in his tutor group all the way through a school for 5 years. So you should get to know them. You should be able to see when things aren't right for the boy. And sometimes it's easier in a school setting than it is for the parents. And I think the parents have to understand that if a school says, we're worried about your son, that's probably something to be worried about because they'll hide it really well at home because they don't want to upset their parents. It's not always. You're not always able to see it. You know, the tragedies are when you don't see it. I only remember one suicide at Boys High, and it was a boy who'd been away with his team for the weekend and then came home and committed suicide. Well, who would know? The impact on that team was amazingly hard. It was a music group. How do you cope with that as a friend of that boy? But who would have known that? So you can't always see it.
And the statistics are horrific in New Zealand for male suicide, particularly young men.
Yeah, it's pretty similar for males and females, but males succeed more, far more, because the ways in which they attempt suicide are much more successful. So males succeed in suicide. It's one of those statistics you don't want males to be better at, really, is you want to be really... And there's a lot of people who do some wonderful work on suicide. It comes right back to feeling loved and feeling cared for is something that might change that 30-second decision, because that's all it comes down to, really. If you can get through that minute where they decide to do it, then you've won, because they probably never do it again. So Saturday night, 2 a.m., you know, what can you do so that they won't think, so that they will think in that 30 seconds and realise. And you can't do anything really except love them for who they are, and love them, even love if they've done something really wrong, you punish what they've done, not them. You know, and that's a really important distinction for adolescents, that you articulate to them, it's not you I don't love, it's what you've done that I don't love and I can't deal with and I need to punish. But I love you to bits anyway. And that's where I talk about the most unlovable need the most love. And sometimes somebody who's very stressed and down will act out really horribly, you know. And so that's when your indicators come on, your warning signs. But you need to, it's prevention rather than cure, I think. And the statistics show that a lot of young people commit suicide in the 5 years after they left school, because schools are very safe for them and very secure and very caring for them. So they've felt somebody's looking after them, somebody's telling them what to do. Suddenly they leave school. That's when parents need to worry most, I think, in those first 5 years when they're not adults, where they're still forming their adult values and beliefs and still forming that confidence. When things get to them.
And they lose that structure of care all of a sudden,
they've
right?
They've lost the structure.
Is there anything we can do better as a society or schools?
Well, universities need to recognise that, I think. Now I'm involved with a university. I think that we need to have that pastoral side and that well-being for students really strongly to the forefront of what we're trying to provide as an environment for them. It's that sense of isolation, I think, that young people get once they finish school, and they might change. They might go to a university, or they might get a job where they don't know anybody. So they lose their friendship group. They lose their adult group that they've had right through those 5 years. It goes right back to Mother Teresa talking about the circle of the family is too small. You know, you need to continually recreate that circle for your child as a parent. As they get older, you need to make sure that they've still got that circle around them. So if they're at a university where they've got an aunt or uncle, you pay that aunt or uncle virtually, or you blackmail them into making sure that they have the child around for dinner every week. You need to create structures around that child until they're at least 22.
This is I hadn't thought about this until now, but it's sort of in that space of mentors. Because when I was finishing school, Sheamus used to email, he was a few years older, and he used to email me.
Well, that's nice.
And he would do these little sort of notes. And one of them said, like, your early 20s are a really tricky time. And just someone that you sort of respected saying that.
Yes, somebody's saying it's enough to make it easier for you.
It allowed you to sort of process things a little bit better. So what's the importance of mentors? Like, you know, how important is that?
Having an adult in your life is really important, because when you're 20, you're still not really an adult, I don't think. And parents think they've finished. I think there is a sense that once people leave home, you think, well, I've done my bit, but you haven't. It's the most critical time, really. It's just like people go back to work when their children go to high school. It's the worst time for them to go back to work. They should have been at work while the child's from 2 till 6, I think, because children don't need you at that age. They love everybody at kindy, equally. Once they're adolescents, they need time. And when they've left school, they still need time. So those emails are a really important symbol of the fact that you were given time and care by somebody else who was a little bit older than you. And who are the heroes for young people? The heroes for young people are somebody who's up to 5 years older than them. So it's not you're all black. It's your person who was in the first 15 3 years before you. Those are the real heroes that make the difference to the way you think and the way you feel. So all the statistics show when you ask people about who are your heroes, that adolescents will go with somebody within 5 years of their own age.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes Mrs. Hassell.
Tucker. It was Tucker. For us, it was Mr.
Right.
Tucker.
But people, they'll be sycophantic about it. But that's who they really listen to. They listen to people who are young enough to remember what it was like and to know what they need. Because at my age, as a headmaster, you lose that. You don't know what they need. You know they need love, but they're not going to listen to me tell them not to commit suicide. They need somebody else in their world. And so we can do that as adults. We can provide that someone else. We can be very aware of that need and try to meet it by being intentional about it.
Your longevity in your career as well meant that, bullying probably when you started was a physical intimidation a lot of the time. And then as technology advanced, it became a little bit more covert and subversive with social media and things like that. So how did you, as a school leader, start to adjust to be able to deal with that situation?
You have to understand that it's so much worse than it was when you were at school.
Yeah.
It's so much different. I mean, it's so 24/7. That's the change. Bullying in the olden days would be when you were at school, and bullying now is when you're in bed at 2 a.m. You're still being bullied. The whole social media thing is appalling. So the schools have changed in being intentional about making sure that students understand the impact that social media can have, but schools can't fix it. We can't fix it. It's like a dog whistle. I mean, as a school principal, you can't hear the dog whistle. Only the students can hear it, really. So they're so much more immersed in it than we ever are. I mean, in my generation, we still use Facebook. I mean, my grandchildren laugh at somebody who uses Facebook because that's what really, really old people use. So
we're big on Facebook.
We are huge on Facebook. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, Susan.
Yes, so we've gone past that, but we're not really aware of what it is. That their algorithms. The algorithms that students develop through their searches are what's impacting and what's making their decisions making for them, because what they see is what they believe, and it's what they're reading is what they believe, but they're very limited.
The echo chamber, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. You're in that echo chamber of yourself. And we're all in echo chambers because we surround ourselves by people who think the same things that we do. But students' echo chambers are crafted for them by social media, far more than they should be. And so how do you fix that? By being very aggressively assertive about saying what you think matters most. Yeah, you have to break their concentration almost from their social media by talking about what matters most to them all of the time. That was my whole mantra. That was my whole philosophy, that my job is to tell students what matters most all the time. Talk to them about love. Talk to them about how important they are. Talk to them. And the same with the teachers, the same with parents. As a parent, even as a grandparent, I think I need to constantly be telling my grandchildren how much I love them, even as they get into adolescence, because they just know they're loved when they're children, because they're so sort of confident in the fact that they're loved. But as they get older, then that falters a little bit as other things intrude. So we just have to make sure that we've balanced that intrusiveness. So we have to work harder than we did 20 years ago to make sure that they see that there's another message out there that really matters.
We've got some big questions at the end, and we're going to loop back onto some of these themes through it. But I was hoping to move us into, I've got it titled as The Cost and Reflection, because there's a few sort of chapters of your story which had, well, I'm interested to talk about, and if you're open to, I'd love to go there. So one is you had breast cancer, which we spoke about in 2006.
Yes, I did.
And from what I'd heard, you didn't miss a day. Through chemo, through all the treatment, you kept turning up. And I was wondering why and
did
if
I
you
do
should.
that?
Yeah.
I decided that was my way of coping, and I felt very, very grateful to the school for letting me do it. I'd have chemo. I'd be the first person in for chemo. I had every 3 weeks for about 8 months. So I'd go in at 7:30 in the morning. I'd be finished by 11. I'd catch the Orbiter bus back to school. So I'd be there before lunch. So then everybody allowed me to think I was doing my job. You know, the school was lovely to me. Like I could even get to assemblies sometimes. I looked like death warmed up, and I felt pretty rubbish, I must admit. But I had it on a Friday because you normally feel the worst the second day after chemo. So if anybody who ever listens to this gets chemo, have it on a Friday, because then you get the weekend to get over it. I was very fortunate that it didn't impact on me like it does on some people. So I'd never be critical of somebody who couldn't manage that. But for me, it was my lifesaver. I just carried on because when I had the cancer, it's not a hormonal cancer that I had. It was just a normal cancer. It just happened to be in my breast. And they said it's quite an aggressive cancer. You'll either be dead in 6 months or you'll be cured.
Holy
so
shit.
so it was a great message. she was a wonderful surgeon. So I was really lucky I was very grateful when it got to Christmas because I found out about it in May. So, but I thought, no, it's not. I'm not going to. I never thought that I was going to die. So I just carried on really, and I was very, very fortunate that I didn't. Had a really wonderful surgeon, and survived. But it was a tough time. It was a tough time on my family. My children were little. My sons were only 10. They were at primary school, or 11, I think, and they wanted to know if I was going to die. You know, and I think that's the impact on your family. If you can carry on being normal, they think it's going to be all right. Your children think it must be going to be all right because mum's still going to work. Dad's still going to work, and they just dropped me off at chemo on the way to school. So, and James just went to school because we wanted to keep everything so normal as we possibly could, and it helped me as well as it helped them, and I think it helped the school. And I had that they saw it as something normal, that something that's just part of life, that the boys saw as being part of life, not something that you step away from life while it's going on. And years later, I'd have boys coming up saying, my mum's just been diagnosed with breast cancer, Miss, and you had it, didn't you? And I'd say, yes, I didn't. He said, I told my mum that you had it and that you're still here and you're still working, you know. So I think that you can never underestimate the fact that making things seem normal, the impact that has on people.
Did the brush with mortality change your perspective at all? A doctor saying there's a chance you might be gone in 6 months?
Well, it does. Well, you can't believe it and you think they're wrong, but it does change you. It makes you more, it's a wound. It's like a vulnerability. You know, once you've had cancer, you have that vulnerability forever. So it makes you stronger. All the cliches are true. You know, they say once you've had cancer, you see the lights are brighter. You know, everything's brighter. Everything seems more real and more precious and more meaningful. And that's true. You know, you are more grateful. And gratitude is a very important part of life, I think, because when you're grateful, when you're openly grateful, you're happier. And so happiness is something that's also something I talked about quite a lot at assemblies, that, you know, only you can make yourself happy. Nobody else, nothing else can make you happy. It has to be you that decides to be happy. And so having cancer reinforces that, you know, and you are so grateful to have that chance to continue on and to have another 20 years, which is what I will have had in May. So every day, you still think about it. I still think about it. All of the time. I speak with people who've just been diagnosed, and the fact that so many of us survive means that we are very, very fortunate. You know, it's a highly survivable cancer.
I'd never thought about that, signalling to other people about carrying on your day-to-day tasks while you were going through treatment. Like, I'd never thought about it from an external perspective of what message you're sending to particularly young men who would have someone. I mean, let's face it, all of us get have a brush with somebody, either ourselves or indirectly through cancer. So by signalling some of those things to those adolescent minds, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective as well, that maybe it was important for you to do that, to show that message.
Yeah, it's part of my role as the leader to, not to be staunch about it, but just to show that, you can carry on. You're not as good as you normally are, but you still can do it. And the orbiter bus people got to know me. It's the only time I've ever been on an orbiter bus, because you're not allowed to drive after you've had chemo.
Yeah.
So, and also parking at Waikato Hospital is appalling. So I used to just catch the bus, so it was quite a lot of fun.
The other really tragic part of your story is the loss of your husband, James, in 2023. And he taught me in classics for 2 years. He was a brilliant, brilliant teacher and a brilliant man.
He was special.
Again, another loss that you sort of work through with everyone knows.
You don't get over it in the same way. You never get over. I don't think I'll ever get over it, to be honest. James was an incredibly special person. I was very, very fortunate to be married to him and to have children with him. And I've learned a lot about ancient Greece and Rome through his conversations at dinner time. He was a storyteller from way back. And so many of my beliefs have been crafted by living with him and by listening to him and to gaining understanding about the classics from him. So I was kind of in his class for 35 years, if you like. So we were married for 35 years. We met at Boys High. My sons went to Boys High. My daughters worked at Boys High. So it's a very strong family connection with the school. The choir sang, the soprano choir, they had a soprano choir at the time, sang at our wedding in 1985. So it's a big part. Don Duff was there, played for us. It was all intertwined. James' life and my life was intertwined with Boys High. He was an old boy himself. Yeah, so he went through Boys High. It's really challenging to lose somebody before you think you should lose them, because I hadn't retired. We had so many plans for our retirement. He just became increasingly frail, and then he was diagnosed with heart failure. And we still didn't expect him to die so quickly, but he did. I had to go up and speak at the World Boys School Conference. They gave me the privilege of being the keynote speaker in 2023, and I was up there when he was in hospital, and they rang up and said, we're putting him into palliative care, and he's probably got 4 to 6 weeks. So that was it. I gave my speech and went straight home. So he was there, and he just decided it was time to go, and he died about 5 days later. Yeah, so... and he was gracious to the end, They say that nothing so becomes a man as the way they leave it. If you're a strong man, that was in Shakespeare, but he was my rock. I can cry any time I talk about James. He gave so much. He gave so much to me, and he gave so much to the school, because without him the school would have been a different place. I was blessed to have him there. And every single boy who was taught by him, I think, was blessed to have him. And that's what gives me so much comfort now, is that literally hundreds of boys have come back to me and said, we loved Mr. Hassall, just like I did. My children were fortunate to have him. Yeah, I've got twin sons, and they're both just like him. Yeah, so isn't that a blessing?
Is that where your connection to Waikato Hospice started to come in through?
No, I was already at hospice. He was under hospice care at the end, but I joined Hospice Waikato. I joined the board at Hospice Waikato when a lovely lady called Elizabeth Bang, who you probably haven't heard of, but she's pretty well known in Hamilton, and Pippa Mahud both said, well, you should join the hospice board. So I was still at Boys High. I was way back in 2017, I think I joined the board there. And then when I retired in April 24, the CEO at Hospice left quite suddenly, and so I took over as the CEO for a year, and now I'm back on the board.
Because service runs through not only your professional career, but your personal life too.
Yeah, well, service is what life's all about. I think, as people say, we live to serve. Well, I don't necessarily think I've lived to serve. I think I've gained so much. But I think that recognising that you can make a difference is really important. You get so much joy from volunteering to do things. Like I see being on hospice board as voluntary because it's my way of volunteering. So you may as well volunteer in a way you can make a difference. So hospice is a fantastic organisation. I don't know if either of you has been involved in hospice, but its mantra is that you live life, you live every moment till your last breath, and it does that. It provides that absolute quality of specialist care that allows people to not be ravaged by pain, but to be both pain-free and alert till they die, and that's a rare gift. It's a rare gift for families, and it's a rare gift for the person who's living their last days to have that time with their families, and they can bring somebody out of a coma in a pain-free way and give them a last day with their family, before they pass. And that's something that I feel privileged to be a part of, to be fair. And I think that the underfunding of hospices is a travesty of justice. So don't get me started on that, but the government needs to fund hospices better than it does because we're so reliant on community money.
I'm going to link you up with what else you're doing in current day. Before I sort of bring you to the end of the Boys High tenure, keen to talk about education. I'll ask our group of friends if you've got any questions for Susan. And the question was, why was New Zealand education one of the best in the world 20 years ago, but not so anymore? I'm not sure if that's accurate, so feel free to push back. But yeah, how are we doing?
We're not doing as well on the PISA scale. It's the main indicator of where New Zealand's placed in terms of literacy and numeracy in the world. And we've slipped. Definitely slipped. It would be too complicated to go into all of the reasons, but I'd say there's been some poor political decision-making over the years. It's consistent underfunding of schools. It's the fact that education and teaching is not valued in New Zealand like it is in some other countries where teaching is a profession which people aspire to be a part of, like medicine and law. And it would be fair to say it's not like that anymore in New Zealand. And it needs to change. And it's not salaries that will make the difference, it's perception, I think, that people need to respect what teachers are trying to do. Curriculum change has made a difference. I think that the new curriculum change which is occurring is a good thing. It's bringing more rigour back into the system. It's insisting on more sort of equity across schools of what they provide and asking more of the students, and that's a huge thing, I think. We need to ask more of the students than we think they can give and then allow them to surprise us rather than just bringing it to their level. And that's part of the changed philosophy over the last 20 years. When you compare us to countries like Singapore, hugely different sorts of education systems and systems and people, and expectations of the people, but they've stayed where they were and we've slipped right back down. Yeah, and it goes right back to the primary schools. In New Zealand, COVID hasn't helped. I mean, we're getting students coming into high school now at a much lower ability level than they would have been. That they're the ones impacted by COVID because that's when they were in those formative years of education. They were in primary schools when we had COVID, so they've still got the gaps. Yeah, so that's not helping either.
What would you say to someone considering a career going into teaching?
I'd say go for it, really. And more people are, like at school prize givings, at Boys High, every boy who goes across, you say what he's going to do, and there's more people saying they're going teaching than there used to be. So I'd say that they'd find it really rewarding, not because of the holidays. They'd find it really rewarding because it's a joyous profession to be a part of. You're making a difference. And it keeps you so energised by the boys, by the students themselves, because they make your life so much fun, they make you laugh out loud every single day. I mean, I might have taught Aretē and I might have taught James McConey, but every single class makes you. Boys are genuinely funny. They are. They crack up funny all of the time. So go teaching, and you just get a life filled with joy and and fun. And, you don't realise how old you're getting because you feel young, because you feel energised by that constant refreshing of fantastic young men and people.
I'm going to pull us along on the storyline, and I want to bring us to the finish line of teaching, because you decide to stand down after 25 years to the day. So I'm interested in the decision and why, and the lead up to it, and all the emotions and feelings and what that last day was like.
The last day was very, very moving, as I knew it would be. I had decided that I'd retire after 20 years, so I always thought I'd retire after 20 years, and it sort of crept up on me. And then Graeme Robinson died, so I stayed a little bit longer, and then my husband passed away, so I stayed after he died just for an extra couple of terms. I was all set to go then, so I thought about staying for longer, but I was hitting my 70th year, so I thought I don't want to be still ahead when I'm 70. I don't think the boys would appreciate having this person coming in on their walking frame to speak at assemblies. So, and it's time for somebody else to have a turn. So it seemed, I love balance and numbers. So 25 years, quarter of a century, seemed like a good number to finish on. So it still quite amazes me that I was head of Boys High for a quarter of a century. So much longer than the boys of the school have been alive. So it was time to go. It was really hard. They had a wonderful, wonderful final assembly for me. The old boys did a lovely evening for me. I had so many wonderful occasions of celebration. Celebrated just what the school was to me, and celebrated what the school had become to the Waikato, I think, and to the old boys. So it was a good time. It was a really good time. The final assembly was beautiful because one of my goals when I became head was to have a bagpipes band, and we've finally got a bagpipes band in about 2018, and we've got our own tartan. We've got the Boys High tartan, and we win competitions, so we're nationally recognised now. And so the bagpipes band wrote a bagpipes tune for me, and they played it at the final assembly, and I didn't know I was going to get it, so it was very moving. So it was a special day. I just bawled my eyes out. Then they had photos of me from my very first year when I first started, when I was about 22, 23 years old. And the boys were very courteous. They didn't laugh at any of them. It's very special.
Where did Nigel Hotham and Greg Kirkham's rendition of My Way with alternative lyrics come in? Was that at the school assembly, or was that at a staff? Very
fortunately, that was in private at a staff meeting. It's a tradition that when long-standing staff members leave, they mock you by singing a song, which kind of highlights your flaws. So mine was, she did it her way. And I actually do love that song because I believe that Frank Sinatra sang it, because he didn't get his own way. It's got a lot of background meaning to it, but they sang it just to mock me. And everybody did laugh appropriately. It's kind of got an element of truth to it, because when I took over, I thought, no, I'm just going to do what I want to do at Hamilton Boys. I want to make it this kind of school, and I'm not going to worry about it. So my whole philosophy was to ignore the Ministry of Education the first 3 times they contacted you about a certain thing, and then after that they usually gave up, or else then you gave in. So I was a bit of a rebel head principal, if you like. And we got buildings because of that. We got the gym because of that. We got the wharenui because we just ignored the ministry. So it paid, because the physical environment of Hamilton Boys has always been really important to me. So when I started, we planted roses and we planted cherry blossom trees, and 25 years later they look as though they've been part of the place forever. And we built new buildings, and so we built the gymnasium. It's got a whole wall of the original bricks of the school. It cost us $100,000 extra to get that wall. They call it Mrs. Hassell's folly, but I think it integrates the whole school. It makes it part of our world. So I did it my way in many ways. So they were kind of mocking me. Which fair enough.
Was part of your way keeping? Was it Headmaster or Head?
No, that wasn't my way. That was the board.
Right.
Yeah, they decided that it was bad enough having a woman. They didn't want to change the title. So, and it's just a generic word like chairman. But it did engender a lot of, talking about mocking, it engendered a lot of mocking from my fellow principals. Yeah.
When you've been at the school 46 years and headmaster for 25, and then you're leaving and someone is coming in to take over your job, what's the knowledge share look like? What does the transition look like? Are you sharing everything you did, or does the new headmaster come and just do it his own way and doesn't want to know what you did?
We were lucky that we got Jared Williams because he'd taught at the school, so he knew. He was a classics teacher originally from Fraser, but he came to Boys High for a few years as a teacher. So he knew the school, and I was the head when he was a teacher there. And then he was the head at Napier Boys when he became head at Hamilton Boys. So he knew what it was all about. So we did share, yeah. So we talked about what I believed in. He understands me, he understands what I believe in. He's carrying on the wonderful things that are already happening at Boys High. He's putting his own mark on it. So we're very fortunate that we got somebody who was a lover of boys' schools and a lover of Boys High.
When you wake up after the first school holidays, after you've finished on a Monday, are you in autopilot mode and thinking, I've got to get to Boys High? And then you realise, oh, shit, no, I don't. I've got all these other things that I could possibly be doing.
It was a bit of a shock. Yeah, it was a culture shock. But I went straight into being the CEO at Hospice. So I think I had a week off after the holidays. And I went for lots of walks. I had this thing, I was going to become super fit and really well and slim. And I did it for a week, and then I became CEO at Hospice for 11 and a half months. So I was back to work, really. But I've still got plans, and now I get days off, and that's pretty special. And I'm still living in the same house that my husband and I brought our children up in. We've got a big art collection. So I've got lots of things that keep me busy.
Yeah, keeping busy is a bit of an understatement because you say you didn't want to be there at 70, but at 70, like, your plate is full. What were all can you rattle off all the things she's doing, Shay?
You can add the ones that you need to, but I've got on the board of Momentum Waikato, on the board of Waikato Hospice, you are on the board of the Teachers Council. You mentor some other teachers, Chancellor of the University of Waikato. You're going to leave here and go to, I think it's opera.
Tanzos meeting.
Tanzos meeting as well. So there's probably you're on a few foundations, I think, as well.
Yes, I am.
So you've still got a few spinning plates.
There's a bit on there, Susan.
I keep myself happy.
Yeah.
I do. I love being involved in things. I do enjoy every single one of the things that I'm doing. I've only recently joined the Momentum Board. I think it's a great initiative in Hamilton. Fundraising for the community. So I've joined that. Margaret Wilson talked me into that. So I think that you can continue to be fit and well and happy and involved as long as you want to be, really. And if something happened and I wasn't, then that's when I'll stop. You know, there's that really good saying that you want to be totally used up when you die. Yeah, and that's how I feel. I want to be totally used up. I want to know that I've taken every opportunity that I've been offered. I feel very privileged to have been offered all these roles that I'm involved in, especially the Chancellor of the university, because that is a role which is exactly suits what I love doing most, which is being involved with young people and being around them and having a chairman of a board role in that sense that you're making a difference to a university, which is a pretty special place to be. And they've just got the medical school started as their latest challenge, and it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time for Waikato University. It's a very special place.
What is that medical school going to mean for the city in general? Because that's only the third one that there will be in New Zealand?
It's the third medical school, so it's the very first one that's a postgraduate medical school, so you can get a degree in anything you like, and you can get a degree in opera or music, and then you can go on and become a first-year medical student, and it's a 4-year degree. So, and it's based at Waikato University, but after the first year you go out into the community. And so it's a community-focused medical school where it will train GPs as well as people who want to go into specialties. But the focus will be on rural GPs for the Waikato and for the rest of New Zealand, really. So it's only the third medical school. It's a completely different model to the others where they do their health science intermediate and then go straight to med school. So it will provide an opportunity for those people who want to come into medicine, but they've already been at a university. It will provide that maturity for people going in, starting when they've done another degree. It will provide that real diversity that people from a range of different degree structures and different areas of interest and passion go into medicine, because that's what we need in our GPs. We need people who are people-focused as GPs. You know, there's quite a difference in the type of personality I think that you'd need for a brain surgeon and a GP. So this university is going to be focused on the people side of medicine as well.
That role as a Chancellor, is it a term role, or is it as long as you want to do it?
No, it's as long as you're a member of council. So my current term ends in the middle of 2028. So I'll be there till then. And so the medical school will be open when I finish.
I've been looking forward to this section called Big Questions from when we started. And I imagine the answers are going to be quite wide-ranging, and we'll touch on a lot of things we've discussed. So the first one I've got is, what is something you used to believe when you became headmaster that you don't believe now, or has changed, evolved after 25 years in the job?
I don't like the word but I'll start with because that's a very challenging question. I used to believe that I haven't changed my belief, but I used to believe very strongly that some boys couldn't be saved, and now I believe that just about every boy can be saved. I think you change when you move from being a teacher where you're right in their face all of the time and you can't win with them, to when you're a headmaster and you realise there's a bigger picture and that you can save most boys. I've never met a boy in my 25 years as head or in my 40-something years as a teacher who comes to school determined to be an absolute brat. You know, they don't do it on purpose, and I think that that's where my mind has changed over the years, that you have to work really, really hard and continue to work hard to save boys. Yeah, it's hard to give up on a boy, and it's something I think I've grown in understanding about rather than change my mind about, that you should work longer and harder to save students. You should give them more love. You should be more forgiving. It's a bit of a 3 strikes and you're out, but you should at least forgive them the first 2 things they do wrong, and then work hard to give them the structure around them to be better. It's the same as being a parent. You know, as a parent, you have to forgive the stupidity and love the child, but you just have to keep loving them in spite of it all. And anybody who's been a parent of a teenager knows what I mean. And anybody who naively hasn't been the parent of a teenager and thinks that they're going to be different will learn that I'm right. So it's hard work.
It's a great
being a parent
answer.
of a teenager.
What would you do differently knowing what you know now?
I would have been much more aggressive. I would have been much more assertive about making changes quickly. I was too tentative, I think, at the time when I started as head. I would be unashamed in our desire for excellence. I would have just pushed harder probably from the start, whereas had a feeling that I had to bring everybody with me, and now I wouldn't worry about the people at the end of the race. I would just say, well, you've missed the bus kind of thing more. And there's not much else I would have done differently, to be honest, because I was very fortunate to have a very clear vision of what I wanted the school to be like. I might have left a bit earlier, I think, yeah, but 25 years sounded so tempting. And because I loved the job so much, I stayed on. But maybe that wasn't the best thing for the school, I'm not sure.
What changed you the most in the role?
What changed me? Things that happen change you. Losing a boy through death, losing teachers. We lost a few teachers over the years. Human things change you. Because what changes you as a person is always other people. It's the people around you that change you. Things happening don't change you. I mean, having cancer changed me in the sense that I was more aware of my mortality, but I was still me. And it just brought out more of the gentleness, if you like, I think, because it made me more aware of how much people needed you to be gentle. But what changes you is the people you have around you. You know, there's that lovely saying that My husband used to quote from Marcus Aurelius about how you love the people who you happen to be put on earth with, and you love them with all your heart. So it doesn't matter who they are. The people you're lumped with are the people you love, and you love them with all your heart. And I think that is something that I would have pushed harder and quicker. But nothing else really. I think that we've achieved what we'd set out to achieve at Hamilton Boys High School, thanks to all the boys. And I love doing all the other little jobs that I do now. And being part of the university is very important to me because it's like an extension of Boys High. It makes not being at Boys High so much easier.
I've got a double banger here. It's what should parents relax about and what should they hold firm on? So what things do they take too seriously they could relax on, and what things could they be firm around?
At school level, with a school, parents should take really seriously the question I think they need to ask of the school, whether it's their child's first school or their last school, is what are you doing to ensure that my child is happy at this school, and what are you doing to ensure that my child can succeed at this school and realise his potential at this school. And it's not about whether they've got good maths teachers or good English teachers or good programs. It's about your child. They should never give in asking questions about whether their child is having his or her happiness, contentness, needs met. That's the most important. I think what parents need to do, step back from now, which is what they didn't used to be so involved in, is when their child does something wrong, they need to trust the school more, that he actually or she actually has done something wrong, and then we're not doing it just to be vindictive because the child's done something wrong. And in my generation, my parents would never have gone into the school and said, I'm not happy with the fact that Susan got a detention. They would have given me another detention when I got home. They would have trusted the school. And I think that's changed. Parents see the way that they can show their child that they care by going in and defending the indefensible behaviour that's occurred, and that's not good for them or their child or the school. So I think parents need to trust schools more. They need to step back more from defending their child as a way of showing love, because it's not showing love. It's all about the fact they have to have discipline in their love, and they have to support making the child a better person. And that's been a real change.
Well, one of the things we haven't touched on is family. And I'm interested because you had twins when you were did you just become headmaster and you were having twins?
They were starting primary school.
They started primary school on my first day.
Starting primary school on your first day.
Yeah.
So 3 girls.
A daughter and 2 sons. My twins are boys.
So a daughter and 2 sons. And we talk about your full plate. I mean, this is a full plate while it's quite a high demand, time, attention job. What did when you reflect back on parenting years and raising kids and the juggle of everything, like what did you learn and what lessons can you give to others?
I learned that you have to marry an amazing man, which James was. Yeah, I couldn't have done my job. I couldn't have been a really good headmaster if James hadn't been there looking after the children. But my children's lives were wrapped around Boys High too. It's what I said, I think, before. You don't have a work-life balance, you have work-life integration. And so my sons went through Boys High. And so they knew that Boys High was a big part of their lives and my life right from the start. Yeah. So my daughter married, my daughter's husband's grandfather was also a headmaster at Boys High. So my grandchildren are Bajents. Oh. So there's a quite close link to the school with our whole extended family.
Makes sense when I think about the surname, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I was a Bajent. Did they change the house name?
No, we were Bajent.
Yeah, Bajent's still
Is
there.
there a Hassall house?
No.
Will there be a Hassall house?
No, there's no Bennett house. So,
true.
Yeah, no, and there would never be a Hassall house. It wouldn't be fair. So it's an unusual name. Yes, so would I spend more time with my children? I would. Should you die never regretting that you spent so much time in the office? Yeah, I think that's a good question. You need to have that balance. I had Sundays as sacrosanct, unless there was a rowing regatta on a Sunday. My daughter will tell you that. So, but they went to things with me. They had their father. If I hadn't had James, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Full stop. He was wonderful. So he was there. He gave up his role as a head of faculty just to be a teacher again, so that he could be there with the family. My son started his primary school on the day I started as head, so he was there. When I had my palfrey, he went and saw them off, and they knew where I was going. And when one of my sons was 5, they had to all draw a picture of what their parents do for a living, and he did me. And underneath, the teacher wrote under it what he told her to write, which was, "My mum's a headmaster. She walks around watching people work." So that was what they thought my job was. And so they had a pretty good idea of what being a headmaster was. Yeah, they just accepted it, and they grew up loving the school like I did.
And the legacy continues with your grandson now?
Yeah, I've got 2 grandsons at Hamilton Boys now. Yeah, so they started, one's in year 9, one's in year 10. So they will continue to be a part of our world, a part of the world. So I keep in touch. And one of my grandsons is rowing, so I actually went out as a parent helper at the January rowing camp. So I saw it from another perspective, that's for sure. It was a joy. It was a joy to see all the boys again and to be slightly involved, but I don't want to put too much pressure on them. So it's their life, it's their journey, and they're loving Boys High so far. So I feel very fortunate that they're there.
You were in the business and are in the business of building good men. So my last question is, what does a good man look like at 40?
At 40? A good man at 40 is, I think, a man who's centred in himself and is aware of who he is and who is prepared to show his emotions. You know, I don't know whether you've heard of Celia Lashley, but she wrote a really good book called He'll Be Okay. I think it was called Growing Gorgeous Boys into Good Men. And she wrote the book based on her studies of 25 boys' schools in New Zealand. Hamilton Boys was one of the schools. So she did it in the early 2000s. And as part of her research for the book, there was 25 schools. She got the 25 headmasters together. I was one of them. And we had dinner together, and she asked each one of them to stand up and say, at what point of your life did you recognise that you had become a man? And she asked everybody except me. So it's really interesting when I look back on that to a man, 24 of them all recounted a time that had to do with a person in their lives. It was nothing to do with bungee jumping or doing something like being named as an All Black or whatever. And some of them had been, because that's who gets boys' school principals' jobs. So they all talked of a moment where something had happened with them and a person that they cared for, like the first time they held their son, their first baby, in their arms, they knew they were a man, or the day their wife married them, or the day their father had died, or the day their father gave them a hug when they got their university degree or something. It was all about feelings. So a good man in his 40s, who turns 40 as a man who understands how important those feelings are. And even in the years ahead, when we've talked about Celia Lashley, those same men will come back and say, that meant a lot to me to talk about that night. That meant a lot to me to talk about the moment when I became a man. So I think it's a good question to ask yourself, at what point did you become a grown-up? At what point did you become a man? It's especially important for men, I think. At what point did I become a woman? What answer would you make? By the time you're 40, you should know that answer. And you should know it really clearly in your mind, and you should be proud of that moment when you did become a man. And you should be working on being the best man, and whatever kind of man you are that you could possibly be, because 40 is the midpoint. So if you're not practicing being good by then start. That's what a man who turns 40 should think.
Yeah. Got a bit of soul searching to do, Shane. You delivered. Those were exceeded my expectations. I just wanted to touch on, before we do wrap up, testimonials, because over the 25 years, you personally wrote the year 13 leave a testimonials, literally hundreds every year. And in the research for this episode, we found the ones you wrote for us, and I wanted to share back with you a passage you wrote about each of us.
She got mine here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Those folders are something I started in my first year.
Yeah, you still got it.
Yeah,
Still there.
well
It's got my whole high school life in there.
That's fantastic.
Do you want to read your one?
No, you go.
Okay. For Sheamus in 1999.
This is just a snapshot.
Sheamus is viewed by all as a confident, self-assured individual who takes into consideration the needs and feelings of others. Sheamus has a lively sense of humour and shows a perceptive, mature mind when having a discussion with staff. His warm, bubbly nature has earned him the undoubted affection of many teachers. This was a whole page of this. I'm sort of reading it to represent the quality and thought of the writing. And for Steve in 2003, on a personal basis, Stephen was a reliable, sincere and honest individual. He has an equable temperament and a quiet sense of maturity. One of Stephen's strengths is his ability to relate well with others, both with his peers and those in authority. He has a unique ability to blend mature detachment with a good sense of humour in working and sporting situations. And the thing that struck me is these are so accurate now. And I kind of wanted to ask about the process, because if you're doing hundreds of these, and this is a time before AI, so you're not taking shortcuts.
No, there's no AI.
Like, how much thought is going into each of these, and how are you doing it?
Well, I didn't know every single boy, so the tutor teachers would write a list of adjectives, and they'd write a paragraph about you, and then I'd write the CV. And I knew I would have known all the year 13s. So I did it when I was the year 13 dean, and I continued to do it until not my final few years, but we changed the system. But it was something that meant a lot to me to do. Like, I'd go home and I'd try and write 6 testimonials that night, and I had a theory that if I wrote it, I had to be able to see it without the name on it, and I still recognise who it was. So it had to be personal enough.
Yeah.
And the year 13 wasn't so huge then; it was probably 200 or so. So you just know the boy, and you know the boy will be the man. If you know the boy, you know the man, basically, don't you? I mean, you don't change who you are, and those things about you are true. They are who you are. Do you feel proud of them? I hope you felt proud of them at the time.
I still do. I would often, if I went back to the school to do some sort of a hosting or speak to the students or whatever it was, I would always take that, and I'd always pull out that the testimonial, because it does feel accurate to who I have become, which is wild to think that you see that in a 17-year-old boy to become that as a 43-year-old man is insane.
Could be just good luck that you got the two good testimonials.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe.
Probably is a bit of that in that too. But you do get to know the boy, and the staff would have contributed to that, and they knew you, and they cared for you. And it's all about, it goes right back to what I said at the very beginning. You have to show you care. And writing those testimonials was one way I could show I cared. Yeah, and being there for you. So that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And it brings you joy to know you're doing your job well, and to know you're doing your job in the way that people need you to do it. That's really key to my whole philosophy, is you need to look out beyond yourself and step out of your own shoes and see what other people need you to be. And every job that you're in, doesn't matter whether you're working at Woolworths or whether you're doing this job, what can I do that will make people feel that I'm doing what they need? And it makes life easy when you do that. It makes life easy when I make a speech. What do people need me to say? And then you just say what they need of you. It's the same as university graduations. There's a pattern that you use, but you try and make it individual to the group that you're part of, and then they feel proud that you notice that they're that group. You wouldn't say something to the international students that you say to the law school students, for example. So it's little tiny things, little small things show you care, and that's what you need to focus on. Yeah.
Right, the last thing I'm going to read is a bit of an outro, but it fits perfectly. It's from Stu Hackney, and he writes, "I'll tell you this little story. It was the International Boys School Conference at Westlake Boys. Susan spoke on leadership. It was a room full of educators, loads of principals from all over the world. I'd gone there as principal of Linda's Farm, and I was sitting in the hall hearing her talk, just being so proud of the things she was saying. It all resonated with me. Then we all broke off into the workshops. I remember walking into a classroom with people from Canada and the US and South Africa. I sat down and someone said, "Wow, imagine if you'd been able to be on her leadership team. Imagine what that would have been like." I was sitting there as a member of the conference, just another delegate. I didn't say a word. I just sat there listening to people. Wasn't she incredible? She was so inspirational. And I just spent those few seconds thinking, yep, that was me. I had that privilege. They were talking about all the brilliant messages she gave, that servant leader who loved the boys and knew the boys needed to know that. Everything they were saying, I was thinking, yep, that was me. I've had that experience. It's that thing, isn't it? When you know you've had an experience that's been special. That was a really special moment for me to sit there and think, yeah, I was the one who won that lotto ticket.
That's very nice of him. It's very gracious. I poured my heart and soul into that speech. I said it, what I said in that speech was the truth, and I spoke for an hour. I spoke right through their afternoon tea, I remember, but everything I wanted to say about what was important to a boys' school and in terms of the leadership team was in that speech. So it's my speech about what matters most, really. So it's nice that he said that.
He spoke so highly of the mentor you've been and how you've helped sort of guide him through his teaching career. And I just want to sort of wrap by saying thank you from me, and maybe Shay can speak as well. I feel very lucky to be at the start of your headmaster journey in those first few years.
Oh, I was hopeless then.
Well, I thought you were brilliant, and it's been so cool. I know you were reluctant to come on because you are a private person, and that actually is our favourite type of guest, someone who just oozes insight and wisdom and such important messages for people to hear. So the listeners are very lucky, and we're lucky to have had you. So thank you so much for being part of our life and guiding us as boys and men and sharing their time.
It's very gracious of you, but I still feel a little bit of a fraud being here, that's for sure.
From my perspective, I was there right at the start of that headmaster journey, and probably I wasn't taught by you, I wasn't taught by James, so my appreciation of you and the work that you've done has come after that. And I think the fact that I was so, and still remain to be so consistently drawn back to give back to the school and to contribute in those ways speaks, I think, to the legacy that you've created and that others have felt through your actions and through love. And I think the overarching theme of love through this conversation has been one that you said there needs to be more of in the world, regardless of whether it's in education or whatever vocation you choose to pursue, is one that I think cuts through. But also the nuggets of wisdom and the mantras that you've shared with us are some that I think parents will be able to take away, and hopefully young men will be able to take away and adopt into their own lives to be good men at 40.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I'll finish off by the Aldous Huxley quote, which I love, which is, "There is never enough love." And full stop, there's never enough love. There's always room for more love.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.